Hello everybody, it's Michael from embodiedthestate.com, and today's video is going to be about how to deal with negative emotions on your manifestation journey. And this is something that's going to benefit a lot of people watching this, because I know every single person that manifests goes through negative emotions. They go through bumps in the road, and they go through circumstances that pop up that seem to not make sense if you're doing, everything quote unquote right? So we're going to get into detail about this, and this is something I'm going to probably make multiple videos about. So this is just like the intro to it, okay guys? And this is something that I have seen a lot of clients that come to me suffering, dealing with this stuff, right? Because a lot of them come to me from having learned other things and, things that maybe don't benefit them the most, and then I have to kind of break them down and reintroduce them to how the law actually works. And we're gonna go deep into the part of how to kind of dissolve these limiting beliefs, these fears that we have, right? So I hope you guys enjoy this video. And that being said, I apologize for the delay in uploading a video since my last one. I just had some funerals happen, and someone in my family passed away and stuff like that. And on top of that, I was getting new computers set up, 2 of them, which is gonna speed up some things for me as well. So I finally got things done. I had some issues with my old ones, and I was just changing things around and setting them up. So that being said, thank you guys for the patience, and I love you all, and everything's back to normal now. So let's jump into it. So that being said, how to deal with your negative emotions when manifesting, right? Like that's something that so many people struggle with. And I've struggled with this myself when I was on my manifestation journey. This is something that is not, as easy as, I make it out to be. And I want to correct what I just said as well, because I know that what I said implies that it's going to be hard, but it's not. It's just, I know that from your point of view, like I make it sound easy, but then when you try it, it doesn't seem like as easy, right? And that's what I'm referring to. And I want you to realize it's actually, when you know what I know, which I'm going to teach you guys, and it's what I teach my clients as well, and I go into more detail with them about it, but things are going to pretty much be a lot easier for you guys. So remember, when you're on your manifestation journey, right, whether it's you're getting an SP, whether it's money, whether it's whatever it may be, you guys are going to have a few bumps in the road perhaps, right? Maybe you're going to feel good one day, and then the next day you're going to start doubting yourself, right? Maybe something happens in your 3D experience that makes you, question things. It makes you wonder, oh, am I doing something wrong? Why did this happen, right? And that's something that a lot of you guys come to me with, right? And a lot of my clients especially, they tell me, oh, I've been doing this perfectly, and I've been doing these techniques and this and that and blah, blah, blah. And, I've just been doing techniques all day, right? And I know a lot of you guys have probably been doing or trying to do techniques all day. And if you're new here and, you come from different backgrounds and different things where, you maybe just do things a little differently than how I teach, then of course it might seem exhaustive, right? But manifesting is not an exhaustive process. It's not a hard thing to kind of, dive into and also reflect, right? Remember, like when I started the law, applying the law, it took me less than a week to get, multiple results of the things that I considered my biggest problems, right? I focused on the solutions instead. And that's, got the ball rolling for me years ago. I started studying and applying what I'm reading, taking notes. I reread the same books all the time. Not a day passes by. Even today, I was, studying, source material, things like that, right? So I just want you guys to realize that when you're on your journey and you're dealing with something negative that pops up, I want you to realize the moment you feel, for example, anxiety, right? Anxiety is a big one. A lot of people come to me with anxiety and they feel anxious about their process. They feel anxious about, am I doing it right? How do I know it's going to work? Things like this, right? And I want you to realize whatever negative emotion you are feeling, you can only ever feel an emotion. You can never only feel something if in that moment you are believing something, right? You cannot feel fear if you are not believing in something that unlocks that feeling for you, right? And the same thing goes for the opposite, right? When I tell you guys to return to the state of the wish fulfilled, and when Neville says this and all the other greats, right? And you feel different, right? Like internally, you think about, okay, if I had my SP, like right now, genuinely, how would I actually feel? And you actually think about that question you just asked yourself. And in that moment, you start, whether your mind starts creating pictures or visuals, whatever it may be, when you identify with what you're seeing, right? When you realize what you are seeing is actually something that's already created, and you start identifying with that, and you start just, as Seth would say, playfully pretending, right? That it's true. and things like this, you're going to notice a change within yourself, a change within your body, right? You might feel happier, you might feel lighter, you might feel grateful, you might feel in love, right? Like I tell some of my clients, like, it's not hard to embody a state, especially the SP clients, right? Because I would say like 95% of my clients are all SP related. And, and some people say, oh, it's so hard for me to enter the state of having them. And I'm like, no, that's just in your head, right? But the reason I tell you this is when you feel those good things, remember that those good things you also feel is because in that moment you have a different belief in that moment, right? It's not the same beliefs that you had 10 seconds ago when you entered this, before you entered the state, right? Instead, you, just like with the negative, when you feel anxious, you feel bad, or you feel fear, it's because you're believing in something that unlocks that allows that to happen, that allows you to feel that, right? You can only feel that if you believe something, and the same thing applies, which is why I told you the other part, right? It applies with the good. So when you're feeling grateful, when you're feeling happy, when you're feeling joyful and in love, as if you already had your relationship in that moment, and you don't have to hold it, it's just in that moment. When you're doing that, it's because that in that moment as well, you too are believing in something that is unseen as well, right? Just like when you're anxious about the unseen, but you believe it. You believe it with such conviction that you feel it real, right? And that's why Neville talks about, how feeling is a secret. That's how, that's why Seth, when he goes into detail about how, of course you don't need, to feel these grand emotions all the time, but Seth does explain that emotions are there, the positive ones are there to accelerate our manifestation, right? And I believe even Joe Dispenza talks about how, feeling something imprints the subconscious mind, if for those that are more scientific minded, right? So keep in mind, it's like, yes, of course, you don't have to worry about feeling these grand emotions and things like this, but it does help, right? And I'm literally living proof, right? Every time when the first week I discovered the law, my life was so bad that I genuinely was like, okay, if this stuff works, it's going to change everything for the better, right? And if it works, then that means I have unlimited options, and that means I'm free. I'm free from this hell that I was living in, right? And that's why in a matter of days, when I started applying the law, I instantly started applying it, right? I read a book and some lectures here and there, and I just got the gist of what was needed from me. And the thing that really stuck with me was, when you pray, believe that you have received it, and it will be so, or it will be yours, whichever you want to take, right? And that made so much sense to me. And I realized that in my journey, when I was brand new, every time I thought of my goal, I instantly just contemplated, like, as if it happened already, as if it's already mine, as if, even though I couldn't see it physically, I accepted that it was already done, which then led me to feeling loved, which is what got me my SP back, my first SP back. Same thing with money, right? And business, right? Things fell in my lap and things like that. So when I was focusing on that as well, I was feeling proud, because if I had a lot of money and I had the ability to buy groceries for my family, fill up their gas tanks, buy the coolest presents on Christmas for the younger ones and even the adults, and be known as that person that can provide for everyone, I felt proud thinking about that. And because I felt proud, remember, I can only feel proud if in that moment I am believing in something, right? The same thing applies. That's why I'm telling you all this, right? It's when I felt something that I knew wasn't true in real life, I was identifying with what was unseen. In other words, I was believing in something that wasn't physically there yet, right? But it was there. It's already created. It exists within me, right? Remember, the kingdom of heaven is within us all. It exists within us, right? And we have many states that we can enter within us, many probable realities that we can, identify with. So when you're feeling bad on your journey, I want you guys to realize, if you're ever feeling doubt, I want you to sit there and ask yourself, why do I think I feel this way? Like, what do I have to believe in for me to feel this, right? What do I have to be believing in to feel anxiety, doubt, fear, whatever it may be, whatever's bothering you, whatever's haunting you today? Ask yourself, really sit there and ask yourself, okay, what am I really afraid of? Like, what belief do I have to hold in order for this to manifest, in my body, for me to feel these feelings, right? And when you really sit there and think about it, you will have an answer. Whether it takes you 10 seconds, a minute, an hour, whatever, just come back to it throughout the day if you can't figure it out right away. But normally it's very easy. And I want you to realize that you have to be believing in something. So figure it out, right? For me personally, right? Like when I shared my story of not this September, but it was last year, September. And I was feeling so great, optimistic, and had 3 client calls back to back. So I was at a drive-thru just getting a drink and like a bagel or something to hold me over for those 3 calls. And instantly I lost my appetite. And I've shared this with, in the past with you guys and some of my clients too, to explain just how simple this process can be. But I realized it was because I was anxious, and then I had a knot in my stomach. And I know for a fact, knowing what I know, that I can only feel those things, that knot in my stomach, that anxiety, because I'm believing in something that would allow me to even feel that, right? And so I sat there, I turned the radio down, and I told myself, okay, so how would I, how would God look at this thing, like this thing that I'm feeling, right? I'm anxious for a reason. What is that reason, right? And then I sat there and I was like, okay, what could I be anxious about? And then the answer came to my head. So then when I had the answer in my head, I instantly asked myself, how would God look at this, right? Would the Almighty, the Creator, the one who's powerful, the one who can snap its fingers and destroy nations, the one who can move mountains and stuff like that can just go from here, the boop, and then just delete everything, right? Who can just blink or think about it and change the course of everything. The one who created everything, the galaxies, the universe, the stars, how plants work, how they clean our air, how soil works, and just how everything, all this beautiful, intricate, type of life that we have, that we live in. The thing that created all this has to be intelligent, right? It is extremely intelligent and knows everything, right? So does that thing, right, that knows everything, that has the power to destroy nations and to give life and to take it, do I really think that thing would that source, the God, whatever you want to call it, right? Do I think that God, if they entered my mind and my body and they looked at what I was anxious about, would they feel the same way? And the answer is always no, right? And when you do that process, you start realizing, wait a minute, I'm only feeling that way because I'm looking at things from a human limited perspective, right? Because of course, if you're human, you view it as, oh no, this is my life. I have to go through this now. I have to deal with this now. But in reality, it's nothing to do with that. In reality, you got to realize that you just have to start, in other words, returning to the eyes, start looking at things through God's mind. Start looking at your life and your problems from the mind of the Creator, where you know for a fact that creation is finished, where you know there are infinite parallel realities, or if you want to call them probable realities, right? Where you know that everything is already created. If you have a desire to have your SP or your job, whatever it may be, a dream job, you name it, right? Your business is thriving. You can pick whatever it is you want. If that's your actual desire, just realize you desiring that means it's already created. And if it's already created, then you realize the only thing left to do for you to experience it is to start identifying with that, with one of those realities where it already is created, and stop looking at your 3D and then letting the lack of movement or things getting worse, kind of throw you off, right? Because remember, even for me, sometimes on my journey, I've had some things go worse first before they get 100 times better, right? But my job is to evaluate, am I doing things properly? Am I identifying with having more than not having throughout the day? Am I returning to lack more, or am I returning to fulfillment more, to faith more? And when I know that I'm doing good mental diet-wise, and this stuff kind of changes and it's not what I prefer yet, the way I look at it is like I realize, okay, it's not the final, it's not done. Right? Things are changing. Some things have to be shaken up before they move. And I don't want you thinking when I say this to expect bad things to happen. But if they do, I want you to just remember that it's not permanent. Right? It's temporary. It's something that is not going to be stuck with you and you have to now live this crappy life. If in that moment, those moments that you recognize these things are bothering you, you start observing them from the eyes of God. You start asking yourself, how would God feel about this thing? Would God be nervous like I'm nervous, right? Would they be afraid? Would they be feeling like a victim how I'm feeling? And the answers are all no. And that's your reminder to step back into the mind of God and then start asking yourself, how would God look at my SP goal? How would God look at my money goal or my business goal or whatever it may be, right? And you realize that the Creator has no fears. There's no competition. It's literally just a decision that they have to make and they wouldn't be worried, right? So it's a decision that you have to make. You have to realize that it's not about anyone else but you. And when you realize that all you have to do is recognize that you're only feeling negative because you're believing in something that you shouldn't really be believing in. Yes, you're allowed to believe in it because that's your free will, but you don't have to stay there in that belief, right? You can recognize that that belief doesn't serve you. You can recognize that that belief is something that's going to manifest if you continue to return to it and make it your dominant dwelling state. And that's what I don't want you guys to do. I want you to realize in those moments, it's not about trying to fight your feelings. It's about understanding them. It's about observing them from the eyes of God or the Creator or Source, whichever you want to call it. And when you realize that Source has no fears and there's no competition, and the only thing Source does is love, and you realize that it's almighty, it's powerful, and that exists within you, then you realize okay, all that's left for me to do is to start accepting that this reality that I want to have, whatever that probable reality looks like to you, it's already done, not in the outside world, not in your physical reality. You're not going delusional thinking that it already happened, but you're accepting that it's already fact because it exists within you, that reality is already existing. The same way you're sitting here watching this video, there's versions of you that are with your goal preferred, and you don't have to watch any videos. You're already fulfilled. You're already good, right? And that's who you want to be focusing on, right? So when you realize that just how you are aware watching this video right now, and you're aware of listening to me and all the words that I'm talking about, there are equal aware versions of yourself that instead of in this moment of watching this video, they are instead doing things with their goals. Whether it's a new car, whether it's a new job, whether it's your SP, right? There's versions of you right now watching this that are on the couch cuddling with your SP in this moment as you're watching this, right? And you're living with your SP and you have the dream life that you've always wanted. But the only reason you're not experiencing it is because you guys keep returning to the negative. You keep returning to your 3D. And manifesting is not about trusting what your eyes see first. It's about realizing that what your eyes see is a reflection of who you believe you are. And that's why when I tell you guys, when you're in fear and you're returning to fear all the time, you are returning to a state of consciousness all the time. And what does Neville say when you return to a state frequently? In the book, The Power of Awareness, he talks about it. He tells you that the state that you return to frequently becomes, in other words, your natural dwelling state. It becomes a habit. It becomes who you are. And if you don't want to manifest negative stuff in your life, then stop returning to those negative states. Instead, sit there and observe them, right? Sit there and observe that negative feeling you're feeling. Why are you feeling that way? What on earth could possibly be making you feel that way? What do you believe in currently that's making you feel this way, right? With such conviction of this negative thing that's giving you this physical reaction, right? And when you pinpoint that, and then you start looking at that from the eyes of God, you start looking at that from the eyes of the Creator, from the Almighty, from someone that, from the eyes of someone that cannot be messed with, right? That you know for a fact you can get your desire if you're willing to be disciplined. How would you then feel about that fear, right? That thing that you're believing in, right? If God wouldn't feel that way, then why are you feeling that way? And the answer is because you're consenting to it, right? And you're not doing anything about it. So what I want you guys to do is when you are on your journey and you notice negative things pop up and you're feeling scared and afraid and so on, I want you to, in those moments, sit there and remind yourself, okay, creation is finished, which means there are infinite realities. And in those realities, there are some where I have my desire. Like it's a whole expansive thing. And if I start relating to those, regardless of what's out here, right? Regardless of the 3D around us, if I relate to those realities that are on the side where I can't really see them, but I understand they exist and they're within me and I can experience them any moment I want. In other words, enter that state. Then I have nothing to fear, because if I identify more with those realities and I just observe my 3D from the eyes of God with indifference, right? With no hatred, no disdain, just from love, right? Knowing that nothing can bother you, nothing can hurt you. And then you pinpoint those fears, those beliefs that unlock those fears, and you observe them from the eyes of God, you're going to notice, you're going to start feeling better. You're going to notice, you're going to dissolve those fears. You're going to notice, like me, your appetite comes back, right? You feel hungry again. You feel better again. You feel back to normal. And it's because in that moment, you just dissolved those fears. You just decided not to believe in that thing that you were believing in anymore, because you reminded yourself that it's not about, anything else other than you, guys. I'm telling you, your world revolves around you. You are the creator. You guys decide how your life goes. And if you are sick and tired of not having results, my only question is, why are you guys not being disciplined, right? So that's what I want you guys to do. I want you guys to sit there, observe those beliefs that are making you afraid, and then focus on them from the eyes of God or the creator or source, whatever you call it, right? And if God wouldn't feel that way, then that means you shouldn't feel that way. And it also means that you are only feeling that way because you are looking at those beliefs from the eyes of someone that's limited, that doesn't have power. But when you realize you are unlimited and you have a supplier that's connected to you that has unlimited supply, then you realize, oh my God, the only thing I'm doing wrong is trusting in my 3D and my fears more than the Almighty, more than God, more than Source. So your job is to start trusting Source. Give yourself just 30 days, guys. I'm telling you, 30 days of just strict discipline. It doesn't mean forcing effort. It doesn't mean, trying to be delusional, pretending your 3D is different. No, be able to look at your 3D and still smile, because inside you can feel like you have your desire. Inside you can see yourself with it. Inside you can feel loved. You can feel wealthy. No one has a gun to your head saying you cannot feel loved by your SP right now. No one has a gun to your head saying you cannot feel wealthy right now. No one, right? So why are you blocking yourself? Allow yourself to feel those things. Contemplate what it would be like spending money if money and success is your goal, right? Business, whatever it may be, a new job, right? Or if you want to work from home, how would you actually feel working from home? If you have a work at home job now that pays you way more and you don't have to commute now, how relieved would you feel if you just remember that that's true? That like, oh my God, I don't have to go to work anymore. I don't have to work in an office, right? In those moments, you contemplate that and you start thinking of what that life would feel like, what that life would be like. In those moments, you are trusting something else, right? And especially when you identify with it and you feel relieved, you feel the wish fulfilled, you feel calm, this knowing, right? That's because you're believing it, right? And that's all it is. So, I hope this kind of got the point across. I was a little bit all over the place because there's so many things that I want to talk about on this topic, which is why I said it'll be like a multi-video series that I'll do over time. But it's so simple. I just want you guys to remember, it's identify your negative feelings when they come, right? Be aware of them, and then ask yourself, okay, what do I have to be believing for me to feel this way? And then when that answer comes to you, now observe that from the eyes of God, the Almighty, right? The one who can move mountains, destroy nations, give life or take life, that could just do anything it wants, the Almighty, right? Remember, you are them in human form, if that helps you understand it better, right? If that gives you a better picture, right? If that makes you feel better, go for it, use it. But remember, you have power through them and they are within you, right? You are this unlimited being, right? You are an aspect of them, right? And within all of us, we have our entity, or some of you call it soul. And, we're literally the manifestation of our entity. And that entity is a piece of something greater than us, of something higher than us, but it's still us, right? So remember, that thing inside you, that who you are at your core, that is almighty, that is powerful, and the only thing stopping you from experiencing your desires is yourself. So if you're tired of not having movement and you're tired of not having your results, I want you guys to really understand, it's time to buckle down and be disciplined. Stop accepting the negative and the fears and start accepting faith and love and having and fulfillment. The more you return to your new identity of who you'd rather be and start feeling the reality of that, start identifying with that more and more, the faster you're going to change your set of beliefs. Because remember, when you feel the wish fulfilled, it's because in that moment you are believing that you are fulfilled. Regardless of how you want to take it, that's the fact. And when you're feeling negative, you're feeling anxiety, so on and so on, it's because you are believing in something that allows you to be in that state as well. So your job is to return to the beliefs that serve you. So example, I want an SP, right? If that's many of you, most of you watching, you want an SP. So you'll tell yourself, okay, I want an SP. And in that moment, okay, think of them and truly contemplate, like, how do you think it would actually feel if right now in this moment you weren't in your reality anymore, and you in other words, you jump to the reality where it's kind of like you're remembering you already have something. How would you feel if right now in this moment you either just got confirmation that you got your SP, or you just remembered that you have them already, right? And whatever one you choose, it doesn't matter. But when you really accept this, like playfully, as Seth would say, playfully pretend like a child would, right? Just enjoy your imagination. Just playfully pretend that it's fact. And enjoy that, right? Enjoy your imagination and have those experiences. See yourselves holding hands or spending that money, whatever it may be. But how would you feel spending that money? How would you feel on those dates? How would you feel cuddled up on the couch with the person you love the most, right? And when you start thinking about that and you really start entering that state of consciousness, you start entering what you think it would feel like, right? You start entering those realities that exist within you. You're then in those moments going to notice a shift within yourself. And that shift is because you have changed your beliefs in that moment. And of course, you will go back to your regular self because that's your default programming, right? And your job is to, every time you think of your desire, you return to the state of the wish fulfilled, right? You don't force it. It's just a simple acceptance. It's a choice. You don't have to make it a process. It takes me literally like 1 second or less to enter a state, right? Because I understand how simple the law is. It's about, what do I want? accept I have it now, and how does it feel to be that person? And then just walk away in that conviction. And then I naturally slip back to my old self, and it's okay. I just make sure I don't go into lack afterwards. And the next time I think of my desire, I go straight back to the wish fulfilled again, if I'm in the mood. If I'm not in the mood, I don't. But I just don't go to lack anymore. Every time I think of my goals, it's having, and that's it. Having and indifference, nothing else, right? And I make sure I stay away from the negative. I stay away from the lack. I stay away from everything else. I just realized my 3D is going to change because I am now changing on the inside. So therefore, all this is just temporary. And now I smile thinking about that, because now I'm thinking, if this is temporary, then I'm going to have my goal. I'm going to experience it because I'm experiencing it inside already. And therefore, I put myself back in the state just by remembering that. It's so simple, guys, okay? So that being said, I love you all very much, and thank you everyone for all your love and support, and I hope you guys enjoy this video. I will, talk more about this topic in the future, in the near future. It's something that a lot of people need to kind of understand, and I might make like a whole playlist on just this topic alone, because this topic alone can solve so many issues for people, right? And a lot of my clients that come to me are always, coming from a place of negative feelings and feeling fear and lack and so on and so on. So I wish you guys all the best. Thank you for watching this. And if you learned anything or got anything of value from this video, all I ask is just hit that thumbs up. And thank you very much, guys. I love you, and I will see you guys soon, okay?